right, we're back in the inside. We're back in the inside. 24 minutes on to the 9 o'clock hour, right here across St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you just joined us, if you missed the first 10, 12 minutes inside with the Major, Honorable St. Clair, the Major Leacock, is on the inside with us. We're having a discussion on a number of issues that have been trending in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We've dealt with the teachers, and now we're going to go on to the 8 activists. The 8 activists, well, some are activists, some are NDP supporters. I'm listening. And then you have Colin Graham, Robert King, Adriana King, Kenson King, Tyrone James, Joseph De Silva, John Mofford, and Rohan Simmons. Some of these names are very popular, and some others may not know off the bat, maybe until they see their faces. But in the mix there, you have political activists, Tyrone James, executive member of the opposition. You have opposition supporters. You have social activists, and you have not teacher. So the charges were dismissed by the DPP, and initially they were charged for organizing a public procession without notifying the commissioner of police at least 24 hours before the procession, and they were also charged with knowingly take part in a procession or meeting in contravention with Section 5A of the Public Order Act. Did you see this coming?
Well, this is for more than humor, Crystal. I when I go
Oh,
to
you
when I
mean
go
this is
to
a big
that
joke?
no, it's not a joke.
Oh,
When I go to that list, there's Patches Robert King, nice they call him. He's a king, and then there's Adriana King, and then
it's a
there's
family of kings.
Kenson King,
Uh-huh.
and for good reason they left out who's as king. I think we need to get a queen in that thing, really,
Oh,
trying to get a sense of balance so that the whole thing makes sense. But this is clearly egg in the face of the government. We could talk nonchalantly about it, but the people who are impacted and affected have gone through weeks, near months now, of stress and distress,
Mhm,
physical and mental.
mhm,
I saw Indiana King and Kenson in their lockup positions in Kingstown and at Kittens.
mhm.
Uncomfortable, stink, smelly, restricted, as cells will be. And
Oh,
and it's also very dehumanizing. Um, you don't want to be detained at the police station for 1 hour, much more for a weekend, more so when you're a woman. And to know that you can go to people's homes is the nature and things case take away from before a daughter, or at the home of the General Secretary Tyrone James and humiliate him, or enter the offices of the New Democratic Party where the leader is located to do an arrest and all the other forms, the physical actions, and only to come back and say, well, look, the law's not on our side. we, mea culpa, we made a mistake. We are sorry. There is no sufficient evidence or basis to go forward. So all the could go. We ain't bother with that. Just so, it stinks. Or is it this is a balancing act that oh well, we let off the people in the Cornelius John matter. So 1-1, we even know. So we let off somebody for you too. What was
really?
it? It sounds like a kangaroo justice system, and that the rule of law is really into a season of merrymaking. I don't know if it's consistent with the Christmas season and be of good cheer, and somebody don't want to be like a Scrooge and they say, "Oh, let them go, man."
But you cannot operate the judicial system like that.
We shouldn't.
I don't think it is being operated like that. For whatever reason,
Yes.
the case had to be dismissed.
Yeah.
Sometimes you dismiss cases
Yeah.
because witnesses, you can't, maybe you mess up the evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you mess up. Maybe something goes wrong with the evidence. Maybe you don't
Yes.
have sufficient evidence. And to prevent making the judicial system look bad, if you
Yeah.
don't have a proper case to go forward with, then
Yeah.
what is the point? Maybe that was the case here.
What impresses me, Crystal, is how you're saying it with a straight face.
Saying what?
Say what you say. Because there's a short word for you for all that you're saying, Chris.
What's the short
I'll
word?
call you Chrissy.
What's the short word?
Somebody messing up.
I don't
they're
think
messing
so,
up.
man. I mean, we have had
The
instances.
administration doesn't look ugly. Listen, it's not as
It's
if
not the
all,
is it judicial
but
system?
it's not as if all 6, 7, or 8 of them got arrested at one time. You arrested one. You don't check your files and your law and your procedures and your protocols to know if it's right. You look up to. You start to wise up and say, well, look, in order to do the next third arrest, these things must be in place. And by the time you get through, you say, well, we got it now.
Maybe
We're
it
going
is
to take
not
up the
a
fourth
case
person.
of the
So what
law.
was it?
So maybe the law that said if you want to protest,
Yes.
if you are in disagreement with anything
Yeah.
politically, socially, or whatever, you still need to get permission to do that. But there was something else that just went wrong, and these things happen from time to time.
Well, I think this is.
You've been around long enough to
I
know
think
that, Major.
for me, I'm satisfied now that this is not a case of prosecution went bad. Is that the prosecution is so overwhelming that they are hemorrhaging politically, and the easiest thing is to just let it go.
Really?
Don't forget that the lady who was charged initially for the assault on the prime minister, she also walked free too. Remember that? Huh? That didn't go
I don't
anywhere.
think Vincentians will ever forget that.
That didn't go anywhere. So what is happening?
For different reasons, that didn't go anywhere.
Well, it's becoming a habit now. But basically, it doesn't reflect or represent our nation state in good light.
Mm-hmm.
Something seems to be rotten in Denmark. And I think going into the new year, the government has to get a hold of itself and address matters.
Why?
Right?
Why would you encourage the government to get
Because
a hold of themselves? You know what I heard the
the
other
rule
day?
of law is important in a democratic system.
Right. So with that being said, wouldn't it work in the NDP's advantage for them to not get a hold of themselves?
Well, I see the line of reason. In other words, if things continue to disintegrate, it comes to that inflection point in which you say, well, look, enough. And people are called to an action. Well, I pray that you're right. This is why I give it to youth and wisdom.
So let me ask you something. I think I heard somewhere last week a talk about fresh elections. Are you able to comment on that as the major?
Ralph said this to me personally.
Okay.
You think there's any pressure amount of pressure they could apply? They're gonna make me call fresh elections.
Okay, so
I mean, we can press and blow and blow and blow. Ralph ain't going to elections very easily,
Very easily. As compared to 20 years ago when he was on the other side.
It's not going to happen that easily. But we have to keep on applying any pressure. What is happening in the process is that the numbers who are warming to the New Democratic Party are swelling, and you
not swelling enough.
Well, it was enough in the last election.
It wasn't enough.
Is that we have to have a different kind of focus. It's not necessarily now of having the majority numbers on your side. You have to have the majority constituencies.
Okay. I mean, I think that is common knowledge. Though.
Yeah, and while we are sitting here, I saw a message saying, well, look, there's so much lumber, cement, galvanized food baskets in South Rivers and in Park and in
this morning you saw that?
Yes, it's on my phone in the chat.
But
the statement is saying, I'm making this in the context that the government is ring fencing the constituency. The good thing is it's the constituency of the prime minister, so it still wants it. If you said that was happening in South Leeward and West Kingstown, Central Kingstown, East Kingstown, I'll stand back. Well, I leave the Grenadines for good reason, because there's no amount of goodies you could offer them that are going to change the minds of the people in that rock and Gibraltar. But it tells you that the government already in campaign mode, because you can well expect that they'll be trying to show up the flanks. Remember, there's only 67 votes that's keeping them in government. We've got into a little politics. One in North Leeward and 66 in North. We know that's what gives them
but 67 important
67 important votes.
Important votes.
67
so even if the number is just under 100, it still equates to
It's
a
still 100 important
constituency.
votes.
Yeah.
And then we're right
Uh-huh.
because we're on the same page with this one.
Okay, so
So we have to be laser focused. We meaning the Democratic Party and the major, that it's about winning the majority of constituencies at this time.
yeah.
And you
So,
know, my perennial argument is that NDP needs to be at least 8 seats comfortable on mainland St. Vincent. What obtains in the Grenadines is broader.
9, 10.
Because there are 13 mainland seats.
Mm-hmm.
7 is half.
Mm-hmm.
So take an additional one for insurance. We have 4 now.
Okay.
So try and find where your next 4 would be. The last
So you want
election.
to spill a couple beans?
Well, the last
No?
election showed that
The next 4, where they coming from?
Eastern Georgia seems to be within the strike. To have the Minister of Finance winning by 166 votes or thereabout, that's not a comfortable margin.
Okay.
We closing very significantly in South Winners as well. But Dixon did better than expected and showed that if more tensions
Better than expected.
way better than expected, you know, because that initially was a Vincent Beach stronghold, handed over to his son and then to Stevenson, and it showed that we have broken the backs of that.
Oh, I wonder if you find any brilliant.
The narrowing by 66 votes in North Windward
Mm-hmm.
by Chevron John, who was going by leaps and bounds as a senator in the parliament and in the work she did in his constituency. Tell me that those are 3 that are right there. If there's only 1 in North Windward, it's telling me that North Leeward, sorry, it's telling me that it's not far away from us. If we could mend our ways and get our maths right, then that's just 4 right there. This is not to say that they're not other pockets, but I'm just saying in practical terms, it is doable.
Okay.
It is doable.
So it is achievable.
And keep what you have.
Well, about that. So you guys have a plan in place for the next election whenever they come. Yeah. The next we're done 1 year. So
we're done 1 year.
Four more years of
4 more grueling political years to go.
Because you don't believe that even if you press for fresh elections, that
I didn't say it can't happen, you know.
I never said it didn't say it can't happen. I said you don't believe.
Yes, that he will give in.
That he will give in. No. Now, I think I want to take the discussion there, right? The Grand Beach Accord that has been making, you know, it's a little head peeking up every now and then, right? And you were very present during that time, 2001. Right? In Grenada.
And Grand Beach is the name of the beach on which they walked.
Right.
That's where the name comes from.
The late Sir James Mitchell and our present Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Ralph Egan Saab. So you can say Ralph because I would have to say, you know, the full thing.
You have to be respectful, yes.
Right.
But when I say Ralph, I'm also being respectful, you know.
Okay. But
he doesn't call me mate, he says Sinclair.
You probably pitch marbles, you know?
No, I didn't pitch marbles. I don't think he played marbles, to be very honest.
he played pan.
So he says. I'm still looking for that evidence, but
if he says that is so,
yeah, let me not be screwed, you know.
Exactly, but I want you to take us back. I know Sir James was in studio with us last year, and that was the first question that we asked, right? What happened on the beach in Grenada? Yes. What happened between himself and Prime Minister, right? At that time, things were very uneasy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right? At that time, I wasn't paying attention. Back then, I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. So you'd have to explain the kind of climate, things that were happening during that period, what led up to elections being called. I know Sir James had mentioned that he said that he was giving politics 35 years. And the 35 years was pretty much up, and he's not going to run for elections again. He also said that at the time, it was a lot of pressure on him. And because of that, those are some of the reasons that led him to not running again. And even throwing jabs at current Prime Minister, you know.
Yeah, you shouldn't run again. Well, I gotta be careful because the people tell me I shouldn't run again either. So it catches up with all of us.
It does. But what is interesting to me is that during that interview, he never really spoke specifically about what was said. Yeah. Did he at any point tell you what was shared on that beach?
No. what I can tell you that when Sir James was alive, he also said to me, "There's only one person can keep a secret." So in politics, that's something you don't speak about. But I was in Grenada, and as you said, it's the time when St. Vincent had descended to an all-time low. I participated in a lot of the meetings that in which James would have been involved and his cabinet. They were held out there in Prospect. That's what you call that area. At Shrewsbury House. That
You're a real tongue man.
yeah, you know,
Prospect.
yeah, just beyond Calico, where you know a lot about your ramping ground.
Shrewsbury.
And the daily meetings were very challenging. Two convergent forces were at play at the time coming up against the government. Politically, the government didn't have a strong mandate. They had won in 1980 elections with the majority of seats, but the minority of votes.
That's the same thing that we have today with the ULP.
Exactly what we have today.
Okay.
And the government took the opposition took the position that they will make the country ungovernable. They mean that they're not going to cooperate. They're going to be protests and more protests, and they're going to be no support for legislative agenda, and they're going to keep the pressure going. So that was the government's comment at the Mitchell administration.
Or the present government.
Yes, yeah.
The opposition in
the
that
Labour Party then.
Right. Okay.
Coming at the government that you didn't have a mandate. Same arguments with that's relevant today, and they applied the pressure in a very aggressive and militant way. The trade unions, I would say, initially and separately, were representing the case for their workers, and they were very active. The Public Service Union, the Teachers Union, the Nurses Body, the CTAW, the Commercial and Technical and Allied Workers Union, that's Buns Bundy's union, which is a life support today. And
what you said, it's on life support?
Well, we don't see or hear about them. And the National Workers Movement, that is probably in the intensive care unit. So we only have, so they all wanted as much as a 30% increase in salaries, working conditions, and so on and so forth. And were objecting against anything that the government may have passed to improve benefits to the Governor General or to politicians, so on and so forth. In that fact, it came to be called the Greedy Bill. So they had a separate pressure on the government, divorced from the opposition at the time. But then there came a time when both forces came together. The enemy of the enemy is my enemy. So if collectively we could apply pressure to the government, something will give. And we literally had the society breaking down, protest after protest on the streets. They choked off the city by what we referred to the heavy trading area there. You had to come across that bridge to get into Kingston. There was no E.T. Joshua Center. You come straight across the airport. Except that was opened at one time with a wire being cut through to let Prime Minister Pandey across the road when the main road was blocked. That's how he got to Sunset Rose Hotel where he was staying. So when things got to that impasse where there was no intermediary, the regional government said, look, we can't have this happening in our own backyard. Let's talk. We'll get back to the same talk question again. So you had the Prime Minister Pandey of Trinidad, my man in you helped me with that name in St. Lucia, Anthony, Denzel Douglas in St. Kitts. One of the boys, I don't remember his last study, the other one of Antigua, leading the CARICOM charge to get the disputing parties together. And they said, let them meet. And Mitchell, of course, in Grenada. Let everybody go down to Grenada and cool heads and meet. So what we had is that Mitchell went to Grenada, along with representatives from the Unity Labour Party, or the Labour Party, and representatives from all of the unions just mentioned, and other stakeholders like the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Employees Federation, the National Youth Council, and I said the Nurses Board and so on and so forth. All that's in the union mix. So they went there to talk and see if you could find a resolution to this burning and looting and rioting and children born on the road, block off, business closing down, and all hell breaking loose. And in the process, I think Mitchell pulled one on the unions you would have to say. In that they felt that they were the ones with the bargaining chip. When he said, you know what? I think me and Ralph could go and talk and solve all of this. It meant immediately they were thrown outside of what initially was their own creation, so that they were marginalized.
And couldn't that have been done in St. Vincent?
Well,
Or maybe it just wasn't. Maybe
they
Grenada Beach
didn't
nice.
think. Maybe they didn't think about it then. But that's after a lot of talking and talking and talking. You know what is the first thing that's instructed out of all of that, Chrissy, and for listening public, especially the young Vincentians, is that almost all of those agencies that existed at that time, as non-state actors, civil society, some people like you do, the National Youth Council don't exist anymore. You hardly hear about the Employers Federation. The Chamber of Commerce is neither here nor there.
It still exists.
In name.
It still exists.
Oh,
They're still operating.
I
It's still
can't.
operating.
I can't see it. Naughty major. But a number of the other agencies were not there because don't forget, you know, that when the government came into being, when life was cut short by 2.5 years, they did form a thing called NESDEC, in the National Economic, Social, and something, which amalgamated all of those bodies into one unit to help country forward. That don't exist
Do you
anymore.
think that was done on purpose?
Yes, because it is supposed to show the preeminence of the state. The state is what matters. In fact, we're seeing that happening again now in the mandate discussed in debate. But in essence, what I want to say out of all of that impasse, the Grand Beach Accord was solved with two important, because the name of it is the Grand Beach Accord. An accord means that this is a parchment, this is a sheet of paper, on which we all gathered and present here are agreeing to as governance procedures in future events of this same kind, so we don't get back to this point. That's what the accord means.
Right.
If this thing happen again, this is what will happen. What will happen? And two things went into place. One, the NMCM, National Monitoring and Consultative Committee, that's to monitor the fairness and legality of elections. So that, in a sense, was to speak to the fact that we had an 8-7 election, an anomaly in government having the majority, but the opposition having the majority of supporters. Something that the Constitution probably didn't anticipate will happen. And then the next agency that they put in place was something called the NCC, National Consultative Committee. Basically, what that says is that anytime that the trade unions and the government are dispute, the Christian Council is empowered to intervene and get peace and harmony between the disputing parties, namely the unions and the government, and resolve whatever differences you have, so they don't have a breakdown in society. So at this time, if we were following the Grand Beach Accords to the letter and with the spirit, the Christian Council would have already ramped up that sleeping NCC committee, which, by the way, many of them didn't know about till we wrote to them, told them about it. We, the NDP, had to tell them that this thing exists. So, but there seems to be a reluctance, and the Christian community, again, seems even of a crisis within a crisis, because on the one hand, you have what is called the Christian Council, Catholic, Methodist, Anglican, and Salvation Army, those narrow four. And then you have the Christian Coalition,
right,
which is the wider body of evangelicals and Pentecostalists and maybe Baptists and all others having their own voices, and sometimes you see the problem.
But even within those two sectors, you'd have some persons being here and some persons being there.
That's right.
Right? Now, a few things I wanted to ask concerning this. There are some things that are consistent with what happened, as you mentioned, what happened in 2001. Now, I want to ask, is it done on purpose?
Is what done on purpose?
The movement to apply a lot of pressure to the government by the unions, although not all the unions are on board. So the opposition at this point does not have full support from all of the unions, because we have two that we don't hear from them, point blank. Or is it inevitable that we are getting to a point of a lot of pressure, and the unions having to step in, the opposition having to step up to try to apply additional pressure on the government?
Well, it is first and foremost not a political issue. It is predominantly now an issue of a dispute between the unions and the government. And that's why I'm saying the government is at war with the unions, because the reason why the unions are agitating is because the government has used the legislative might to introduce a legislation called the Public Order Act, which says vaccine or else.
Right.
And the unions push back against that. They're saying, look, we figure that is high-handed. We have a lot of our membership who have not of that view, and therefore should take a stand. So that's from the union's vantage point. And they're pushing back against the very government that they helped to create. Now, the political interest in it is that let's start at the constituency level. If I, as a representative, let's say, of Central Kingston, and this did happen, I'm driving past the customs building, and I see on the streets on the picket line customs officers who are from my constituency and who are likely now to be without a job because they're still taking that position that they're not going to be vaccinated and they should lose the job. Or I have, as also this is a practical case, supporters of mine who work, let's say, at Tongue Board, and who have now been told that they're on the front line, and they have what they consider in their own minds legitimate reason why they should not take the vaccine. And they asked me to go and represent them with the warden, which I did. I'm being drawn into it. So I could expand that to say the same thing with the teachers from Central Kingston who are involved. So I have a moral obligation, political obligation to go and say, look, I have to take a stand on this matter. And I am not who I am because I'm self-made. I am who I am because people have asked me to be a representative of. I am a servant of peoples. So I have to have a listening voice and to weigh the discussions and conversations as to where we should go in this matter. And I'm clearly of the view that, well, vaccines are an important tool in the armory of the public policy position, along with the other things, all the other protocol, distance, socialize, and all of that thing. You know, do we swing the pendulum all over this side, or say, look, let's have more conversations, and that your people don't lose the work? And therefore, if you move then from one constituency to 2 and 3 and 4, then it becomes a party thing, and then you have a lot of
Right.
so the party gets involved.
Okay, I'm gonna take a call right now. So
Sure.
you'd need to put on your headphones, please. All right, lovely. Hello, good morning, caller. Sorry about
Oh, we
that.
lost the call.
Yeah, we'll find them back.
Yeah.
We'll put on a little
Yeah,
magnifying glass and so on. Now, my final question on the Grand Beach Accord, right? It has to do with what happened very recently. Now, you said, Sir James said that, right? You said Sir James said that only one person can keep a secret, and there were 2 persons on the beach. Do you think that the Prime Minister was correct in sharing what was shared, what was said between himself and Sir James at the time?
The Prime Minister has a right to make his own decisions.
Would you have done that?
I'm not going to second guess him. But I think to the extent that he did it only, as I understood, with the partner Sir James, then then there's an ethical question there because Sir James can't respond. So had he had that conversation when Sir James was alive and to share a different view, the discussion changes. You know, so I would have held the view that, look, both of us had a conversation. God bless the soul, you're no longer here. What was said between us is between us. I think that would have been my position.
Okay, and it'll die with me.
Yes, because circumstances.
Okay,
that would have been my position.
So,
but
I hope you're not thinking of he's trying to steal spotlight. Now that Sir James has passed, so he's trying to focus the cameras on himself.
The Prime Minister will always be the Prime Minister, and that too he has a right to be. I'm not going to second guess how he does his politics.
Okay. Everybody has a different style of politics.
Everybody has the right to do own politics.
Okay, I think we need an upgrade of this style of politics. But anyways, that's a different day.
I also agree with that.
Okay.
So that's why we depend on young, bright, and talented souls like yourself to fill these voids. You know what I mean?
You have to excuse me.
Of
Have to
course.
excuse the frogs in the throat this morning.
Yeah.
All right,
I increase it
are increasing almost exponentially.
exponentially.
Almost exponentially. Now we've got the Major inside with us. Now we're gonna take a break, right? At this point, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about the high risk that's in Vincent and the Grenadines. Is then we're gonna be talking about money. You're I don't want to say money man. Could I say money? You're a money guy. You speak on. Okay, so Major is a money man, right?
You're the money man.
So he will be talking about money. We'll be talking about money
I like that.
when we come back. I don't know what part of the money man definition you are channeling your energies to.
Well, let me put it this way: that I have an MBA in finance,
Okay.
master in business
So
administration.
yes, a money man.
With finance, and my background is management, business management.
Okay, lovely. So politics and money and economics,
And
all
yes,
of that is coming up in our
that's my
next.
forte.
Yes, all of that is coming up in our next segment, right here on the Wake Up Call. All right, 7 minutes after the 9 o'clock hour. Time for a quick break.